Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cybersecurity Leadership Series organized by Cyber Houston. Thanks for joining us today. We'll be discussing the Center for Internet Security Controls and the CIS Community Defense Model with Andy Roos. He's going to be presenting the new version of the CIS controls released last year, it's already the new year. These controls are one of the most important and used cybersecurity frameworks in the USA, and it's an excellent fit for both mature and new organizations. You'll learn how you can take advantage of this new version and understand what the experts recommend to protect your information in your organization better. Before we get started, quick housekeeping note. Please post your questions and comments in the chat section, and we will get to those and answer them live. Hopefully we get lots of questions today. This is a really good topic, and you don't want to just hear me asking questions. I'm Phil Beckett. I'm CEO with HASA, and I'm also the interim chair with Cyber Houston, and I'll be your moderator today. Cyber Houston is a Department of Homeland Security recognized ISO. We're a coalition of volunteers representing leaders from business, from cybersecurity, from academia, from government, and civic leaders. Our goal as a group is to continuously educate and inform business leaders on how to manage and govern cybersecurity risk. And this is part of our leadership series here. It's my pleasure to introduce today Andy Roos, who's Chief Information Security Officer with NovoPayment. Andy has over 20 years of global experience in IT and information security. He's an MBA in MIS, a bachelor's in computer science, and 8 certificates in IT management information security. He started his career as a help desk technician at the university where he was studying, built his path from the infrastructure side of IT, doing information security as a part of his job. He had multiple global roles and has been part of different executive leadership teams for multiple companies. Andy's the founder of the Houston Banking ISO, where he collaborates with leaders in this sector, helping each other to better protect their companies. He's also part of the board of director and sector chief for Telecommunications Cross-Sector Council of InfraGard with the FBI. This group is also an ISO format where leaders from different companies collaborate and share information about the sector. And last but not least, along with myself, Andy's a member of the Cyber Houston organization. Andy's a collaborator of Center for Internet Security, participating in the creation of new versions of the cybersecurity framework. He's also a writing contributor for the Cloud Security Alliance on zero trust subjects, between others. On a personal note, Andy's married, father of a precious little girl. He loves reading, sports, and teaches spiritual information for adults at a Catholic church in Fulshire. A big welcome. Thank you to Andy for joining us today. Andy, good to see you.
Good to see you, amigo. ¿Cómo estás?
Bien, gracias. ¿Usted?
Very good, very good, very good. Thank you for having me.
Hey, Andy, I noticed you always used to have that car behind you. What happened?
Oh, yeah, my little car. So what happened is Liz doesn't like my car, and she told me that I have to get it away. And then my wife, I think she talked to Liz and she sold it in the marketplace. So the little car it was a great breaking ice conversation for everyone is gone. I miss it. I think I'm going to put something else. Like Chessie, who has all these amazing toys. I'm going to put something like that there. I may be calling Chessie to ask him for some recommendations. So Chessie, I don't know if you're online, but I'll be calling you for some recommendations of what I should put over there, so I can use it as a break ice.
Yeah, I know Jesse has all the toys. It's hard to compete with that.
He has very cool toys, super cool toys.
Hey, thanks again, Andy. And I know both of us want to give a shout out to InfraGard. Did you want to say?
Yeah, I can do that. So I'm not sure, who from the audience has not heard or is not a member of InfraGard, but InfraGard is a great group to collaborate and to receive very important information about what's going on related to cybersecurity, between other things. So we have the largest group in US here in Houston. I collaborate with them the same way I collaborate with Cyber Houston, and they have excellent content. They produce very good material. And as you know, Phil, we're trying to collaborate better between Cyber Houston and InfraGard, so we can kind of cross-share content, do events together, so we can, because at the end it's the same audience, we have the same goal that is at the end, creating awareness and informing our community.
Yeah, no, you're right, Andy. We're working hard on that. So it's complementary here, and we've got similar audience or the same audiences. How do we support each other in the same goals of protecting?
Yep, that's the case. So looking forward for that new venture with them, collaboration.
Andy, I wanted to start because you're going to talk about the Center for Internet Security, which you're a contributing author, the controls. But maybe for our audience, could you frame up the key differentiators between CIS and NIST and why they might choose one over the other? Or, and I guess in my life, hey, it's pick one and do something. Is better than not. But I'd love to hear your story.
Yeah, so I would say that there's so many frameworks, right? There's so many, and all of them they're really good. I would say that the difference to me is this framework compared with other ones has a much more rapid refresh rate. So the security controls have been around since 2008, and at the beginning was SANS who created the top 20. But at the end, what happened is that the transfer ownership from SANS to the CIS happened around 2015. And that group took the ownership of these controls and developed much more material. And now you have the CIS benchmarking, you have the hardening images in the cloud that you can use. There's so much excellent material that the Center for Internet Security they have been using. So I tracked them since version 6, and I have been trying to understand, what they introduced. So you understand when version 6 was live, the cybersecurity framework from NIST was a 1.0, and they just released 1.1. And that framework is still the same one, and this one already is in version 8. So the rapid change that this framework has because of the collaboration is one of the things that I really, really like. And the two are related because if you compare the safeguards and controls that the CIS has, you will see the mapping. So if you're a critical infrastructure for US, which you probably want to follow the NIST framework, you can complement with this framework very well. So you can use this, as a complementary framework for the NIST if you want to take advantage of the excellent things that this framework can introduce.
So that's so. Andy, is that faster development of CIS controls? Is that adaptation to the changing cyber environment and threats?
Yeah, well, some is that there's a lot of changes that happen very fast. So as a lot of these different frameworks they were developed, and it's a lot of work, right? So for example, ISO 27001, the latest version is from 2013, so it's almost 10 years old. So in these 10 years, you can think that a lot of the different things related to information security have changed. Of course, some of the basics are still the same, right? Asset management, new hires and termination processes, those type of things are still the CI triad is the same. Those things will not change. The problem is that how other things will, somehow change and impact how you position your framework. And that's what we're here for today. The thing is to try to talk about if you have one of these biggest framework like the NIST framework or 853 or high trust, how you can complement those frameworks with the great work that CIS is doing.
Yeah, no, well, thanks, Andy, for that introduction and framing for everyone. I will hand it over to you for a presentation.
Thank you.
I'll interrupt with questions as we get from the audience too.
Yes, please do. So this is, if not, it's going to be a monologue, and please feel free to ask questions. If I don't know, I will tell you that I don't know the answer. So don't be ashamed of ask questions. I will try to do my best. Perfect. So the agenda for today is we're going to go through a couple of slides trying to introduce you guys with a framework. We're going to talk a little bit about the concept of implementation groups, which has been a very important change that the CIS introduced in version 7.1. And then we're going to go to the 18 controls. We're going to spend a little bit of time going through them. I'm not going to spend all the time reading each of the controls because, as you can imagine, it's a lot. So I'm going to try to highlight something for all the 18 controls. Then we're going to talk about how you can do your own assessment. And we're going to also talk about the CDM, which is the community defense model, which is a validation of these controls with current threats. And with that, again, please feel to tell me if you have questions. So on the introduction, I wanted to explain, as Phil was saying, the SANS Top 20 was how these controls initiated, in 2008. Now we're in version 8. This was released in May of last year. And why I feel that this is a very important framework that people should be aware of. The first one is, this is the goal of this control is to try for you to have a set of actions that are prioritized based on the different type of attacks that a company will suffer, and in the priority of the controls are the priority on how you should be putting those actions into place. So control number 1 is more important than control number 2, control number 2 is more important than control number 3, and so on. But at the same time, how these controls come to place is also very, very important about how this framework works. This is a collaboration of experts. I think that the last version, it was more than 5,000 people that we collaborate in the workbenches to kind of make comments, ask questions, ask about why we're changing the numbers, or what controls were missing, and what safeguards we should be adding for each control. So it was a collaboration of experts from every sector that you can imagine. And these are we are people that every day we work in this in information security. So as you can imagine, the value of people who is touching and feeling what's going on is a very important flavor that this framework has. At the end, the goal is to try to help to put the focus in those things that really matters, those things that they are going to probably be attacking your organization, and how you can have these controls in place to defend it. There are these design principles, that is offense informs defense, focus, feasible, measurable, and aligned, that you will see an orchestrating of how these controls make sense. So this is a little bit of why these controls came to place and why they are so important. Now, this is a slide which is actually showing you the 18 controls. Version 7 and 7.1, there were 20 controls. Now we have only 18. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this particular slide, but I just want you to know exactly what those controls are. And I'm not sure if you guys already realize, but for each of the slides that I present content, I'm going to try to put in the slides where you can get this information from, which I'm sure Liz is going to share with you, so you can go and try to find this information online. Now, some people say, well, what was the change, right? Version 7, you have 20, version 8, you have 18. Where kind of the critical change? So first of all, controls number 9, 12, and 15 were kind of eliminated, and some of them were kind of wrapped in other controls. There's a new control that is number 15 that is related to service provider management. Thank you to SolarWinds and everything that happened with Kaseya, SolarWinds, those type of situations in a couple of last years. And then you have a couple of combinations. So control number 4 and 14 were now are part of control number 6, and then controls number 5 and 11 are now part of control number 4. One last thing that I like to highlight from this is that blue line that you see in data protection. Data protection make the biggest jump from control number 13, so 10 places, to control number 3. And this is very, very important because they are trying to keep, the relevance factors. And as you can imagine, ransomware was one of the biggest reasons why they moved the data protection from one place to the other. So it's very important now in the new version that you know where's the data and how you protect it. Okay, so let's talk about the implementation groups. In version 6, 7, and the previous versions, and I'm sure, Phil, you probably heard about this, is the concept of hybrid, on the basic cyber hygiene. Everyone, talk about, that concept is very well understood in the community. Now, what happened in version 6 and in version 7, the controls number 1 to 6 were considered what you call, the basic cyber hygiene. What they did in version 7.1, and also now it's in version 8, is they say, well, actually, it's not only those controls. There are going to be specific safeguards that are kind of sub-controls in the previous version that we're going to tell you that are across every one of those controls, or almost every one of those controls, that you're going to have to be doing something to be saying that you have your cyber hygiene coverage. So it's no longer, the number 1 to 6 is now across the board. And as you can see, the total safeguards now is 153. And it's very important, the implementation groups, because they will guide you, besides the number of the control, in the importance of how you want to deploy the strategy in your cybersecurity program. It's very important that when you start your journey in cybersecurity, you understand that you have to prioritize your actions. You cannot attack every one of the problems that you may have, because you cannot gain maturity so fast. This is a journey. Every day you have to build. In fact, you have to put things in place that are going to gain you to a better maturity, a much granular control on the attacks that you may have. So here, what the framework is pretty much telling you is you should start with those 56 safeguards and then move to the 74 once you finish with the 56, and then move later to the 23 whenever you have the other ones done. So this grouping is very, very important related to prioritization and importance of how those controls should be in your information security program.
Hey, Andy, can I ask you a question on that? I think
For
that's
sure.
really smart. You've got this sort of base layer. Hey, this protects you, and then IG2 and IG3 takes you to another level. How does that also relate to, hey, what's my treasure, and where is it? What is I'm trying to protect? And of course, stopping people getting in, that's all of us. Hey, but maybe you can't protect everything. So sort of how does that play with it being informed by what I want to protect?
No, it's what you're asking is extremely important, and I think that one of the aligned to what you are saying is this change that we have seen in version 8, where they move the control number 3 of data protection from number 13 to number 3. If you kind of analyze of the controls, there's a very simple message here. It's about understanding what you have, having the value of what you have, and at the end understanding the risk of that asset, piece of information, or whatever you want to call it. All the controls, the 18 controls have that mentality in place. It's quite simple, but it's very difficult to achieve, right? At the end, the questions that you should ask all the time are about risk management and about the assets that you use and how you should protect. I like to give this example. If I have pictures of my daughter in my computer, right, the company doesn't care about protecting those pictures. But if I have pricing information of a product that we offer, that's different, right? So those two things are in my computer. So those two things are going to be very different, the way how you take advantage of these controls to protect that. And the classification is essential for you to be able to do that. The problem is sometimes is we treat risk the same way across, so that make it super expensive for anyone to afford. And the controls are saying, well, the first thing that you need to understand is the what, right? You need to understand the what and the where, because at the end, that's not the same risk that it poses to our organization. My daughter pictures are the most important for me, right? But for the company, probably they don't want to spend, a lot of money in protecting that piece of information, because at the end, it's no risk for them if something happened to that information. Does that make sense, Phil?
No, it does. No, thanks for that clarification, Andy. Yeah, that these controls really require you also to do that analysis, of what am I trying to protect, since I can't protect everything. It's just too expensive.
Correct. And look, for that, I would like to get to control numbers 1 and 2, because look at these controls. Both controls are talking about inventory, are talking about saying, and by the way, these have not changed since version 6 for sure. So they're saying, hey, what are your assets? What is the software that you have in the computers? The first question is about actively managing those things, your enterprise assets, and actively managing your software. And this is kind of, the precept that we have is you cannot manage what you can see, right? You cannot protect what you don't know you have. And here you're talking about, pretty much enterprise assets and software, and we'll talk about data in the next control. But if you follow what I said before, it's the same question: is what you have keep updated where is it, and at the same time make sure that you're protecting it in the right way. Now, these controls have one thing that I like to mention that people sometimes forget. It's not only about what you have, it's about being able to process whatever is should not be there, right? It's not some people tell me, well, if we run in a script in our network, right? So we do an nmap and I map every device that I have in my network. Is that enough for saying that I will go over control number one? Well, no, because if you find something that it should not be there, you need to take it away. And how you're going to take it away is a very important question, because that's where the control is effective. That's where the control is doing its job. It's not just a checkbox, right? It's not just a checkbox saying, oh, I'm doing my inventory. No, the inventory is justified because you want to address anything that is unauthorized. And of course, for understanding what is unauthorized, you need to have a baseline. You need to know what is a normal case, what are the devices that are authorized, and also what are the software that those devices should have. So these two controls, number one and number two, have been there forever in this framework. And the important thing here is, again, is knowing what you have, keeping that up to date, and then, of course, handling the unauthorized. Now, something I like to add, this is my personal note, and you will see I'm making personal notes all over these controls. It is, you need to manage this through automation. Having an Excel to manage these controls is way too difficult, right? If you are managing this through Excel, there is a high chance that you're going to miss something. You're going to forget the device. You're going to forget something. It's very, very unrealistic that you can have these controls in place without automation. And the second question, and this is a homework for everyone who is in the call, the homework for you and the question that I would like to ask you is, how long does it take your organization to recognize an unauthorized device? I'm going to ask that again. How long does it take to your organization to recognize an unauthorized device that is connected to your LAN? That's a very important question. The risk of that question, of that time, is what you are accepting at the moment without controlling your asset inventory.
So on that, Andy, I know I'm going to get the number wrong, but for identifying a breach, it's something like, or that somebody's got inside your system, it's something over 200 days, which is horrible.
Yeah, imagine that you have an unauthorized device that someone put there. They can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
You need to have, you can have segmentations, you can have VLANs, you can have some protections on those layers, right? To be fair, but at the end, if something is in your LAN, there's a high chance that they can do a lot of damage if you don't have those extra controls. So if you don't have something like defense in depth, right? Probably you want to know that, because if someone connected someone to your network, you probably want to know that happened, right?
Can you? Did you know? Is there an average number out there of?
I would tell you that in my career, when I asked this question, it's pretty much 75 to 85%. It was, I will never know.
You'll never know, right?
I will never know.
Yeah.
That's it's just we don't, in security, we just represent risk. That's a risk. We have to represent this. That's a risk. So what are you going to do about it? And the controls here are saying, well, you better put handle on that, right?
Right.
And now, following with the same concept, Phil, we're talking about data protection now, and this is one of the major changes that we have seen. And here, exactly what you were saying before, and with my example with my daughter's picture, is like, you have to understand how you protect your key information. And people, honestly, when I talk about this, everyone gets very scared, because doing this right is a lot of work. So I like to tell people, look, there's my boss has a very good phrase who says, you cannot eat how you eat an elephant, bite by bite. So this is how you will attack this problem. You will say, okay, what are the critical information for my organization? I'm going to define one category of those, right? I'm going to say, this is a piece of information, pricing information, I don't know, creation, innovation information, whatever you feel that you need to start with, and do the whole life cycle on that piece of information. So when you do the whole life cycle of that information, understand who creates it, how you store it, how you manage it, and how you share it, right? When to destroy it, when to archive it and when to destroy it. So in all the data life cycle of that piece of information, you put the controls, and then go to the next one, because if not, this is way too big. Asking your employees to start classifying everything they produce is honestly overkilling. So you have to start small so you can achieve what you need. You need to start achieving that protection for your critical information. And the second question, I have two more here. The first one is, remember that data privacy is not data protection. There's a lot of, sometimes they use, data privacy is not the same, right? Data privacy is more related to PII. When you talk about data protection, it can be confidential information that has nothing to do with personal data, pretty much. And the last thing is, I like to ask this question because I feel it's important, is what are you doing about ransomware? How you are going to have a trusted version of data if you have to restore something? And there's multiple ways of doing that, which we will talk in a later control. But just to give you some ideas about this. And again, I'm going to give you a second question for homework. The second question will be, what is the most critical information your organization is handling today, and how you are protecting it? That will be the question for the homework on this one. And I know, so we have until 12:30, so I will have to speed up some of this. So one thing, this is another one that has been a little bit combined, that is the security configuration. Again, one of the things that this is trying to do is making sure that you don't have default configurations, default passwords, open protocols that you should not have. And the second thing here is to maintain that up to date, because the process is, I deploy something and then I just forget. Never do it again, never check it again, never realizes the configuration is the right that it should be. So this is the one that benchmarking will help you. The CIS have absolutely excellent documentation on benchmarks that you should take advantage. I encourage everyone to go to their site. They have very good documentation on pretty much every type of device.
Just sorry, Andy, without slowing you down too much, but going back to what we're saying with the changing world, I mean, the Internet of Things has just exploded, and now your light switches, your refrigerator, and or if you're oil and gas, all your pumps, everything out there is connected to the internet. Just makes those endpoints so much more vulnerable.
Yes, and that's important for control number one, knowing what you have in the network. And of course, in control number 4, because at the end, if you have to have one of those, what is the process, of securing them, making sure that they are up to date. I like to give this example. I think Elizabeth actually, Elizabeth from our team, she said about this. I think she was the one who mentioned this to me. Someone brought an Alexa to their office where they're all lawyers. She was telling about someone she knew, and of course, Alexa is listening in all these conversations that are, they probably should not be listening, right? So it was one of those things, is how you control those things from happening. So yes, IoT is a major situation to address when you talk about security.
Right.
Okay, so when we talk about account management and access control management, we talk about centralization of identity and access management. So in this case, for example, I will tell you also, you need to have a tool to manage this. Unless you are a master in PowerShell and being able to control how people get access to prevention, gate kind of privilege access. Tools like LT Auditor can help you here. To kind of get information that you want to gain, and also help understand and create the reports that you have to produce for your compliance officers. The second thing, and this is funny, that we still talk about MFA, right? MFA is a critical part of your identity and access management today. Is something that for anything that is administrative purpose today is a must to have. Anything that you require you to have that privileged level of access, you need to have some level of MFA already deployed. And of course, anything that comes from the outside is the second thing I would say, that that is exposed to the external. If you can also put some level of MFA whenever possible.
And then on that, Andy, my experience now has been, for if you want cyber insurance, we're not talking about that today here, but without MFA, you're not even going to get it.
Yeah, that's a great point. They're going to ask you that question, exactly that question. They're going to ask you, are you having MFA? And they're going to ask you in particular, the admin for sure. Some of them, they will tell you about the email access. for the users, which, there's some resistance, as you can imagine. But the controls here are, I don't know if you see here on the slides, but on 6.5, they're saying, hey, for anything that is, administrative access, remote network access, external expose, they're saying you have to have MFA, and that's implementation group number 1. So that's the basic cyber hygiene that we were talking, a second ago. So that's still, is on the basic side. So I will give you another homework for this one. I'm giving you so much homework. So I will challenge anyone in the room who has an Active Directory, which probably we all do, and I will ask this: go to your Active Directory and ask these 2 questions. First one is my Active Directory organized in a way that aligns somehow to the business, right? However you have it organized, this makes sense? And the second question is, how many accounts do you have over there that you don't even know why they're there? That's a very important question, because as you can imagine, again, remember what we talk about, the principle, knowing what you have, access, identity and access is very important to understand how you're using those accounts today. And, again, that's what I was telling you about tools that they will help you here, because, for us, for example, LTO Editor help us to find dormant accounts that we're not using, those type of things that honestly will take a monumental effort to do it manually.
So, Andy, can I ask you another question on that? And you just say,
yeah.
Oh, it's not appropriate. But, end users, we can force them to change their passwords every 90 days or whatever. But then we've got service accounts in our Active Directory that are running applications. And it's a pain if they change every 90 days, because somebody's got to go fix that. And so there's a habit of maybe not having them expire. How did the control?
On the service account, what we normally do is we have a different policy, and those are managed totally different. We have a longer expiration, but also we have a longer password requirement, right? So, and that will depend on the system who is consuming that account. Normally, those are the ones who put you the restrictions, but I would say that they don't have the 90 days. They are probably double that, 180, or maybe once a year. And then on that, you will require that those service accounts, they have longer passwords. And of course, the names are not email service, they're a little bit more sophisticated in the naming convention that you will use.
Right. So you block them from brute force attacks.
Right. So kind of the same concept, yes. Okay, so control number 7 and control number 8. So control number 7, I was sad when I see this losing. This was control number 3. This is one of my favorite subjects in cybersecurity, which is vulnerability management program. There's so much, that you can do to protect an organization from a good program in place. And there are such great tools online that you can use for this. So sadly, it lost a couple of places. So, these things happen. Now, a very interesting thing I'm seeing in vulnerability management that, again, is a trend, is some vendors are associating this process with others. So, for example, you can tie today your vulnerability management with your remediation when you talk about patching. So some vendors will sell that in a single product, which will make that circle much more complete and more easy for you to manage. So that's something that you should all pay a little bit of attention on where this is moving to. Control number 8, to me, is one of those that is very incorrectly understood, because login per login is it doesn't, it's just a compliance check that you want to do. Logging for you to understand what's going on and to detect something is wrong is what you should be doing. We all should be doing that. And the other thing is, not everyone is capable of understanding logs in the way that, a cybersecurity professional may do. So again, log is a very important thing. To me, I'm surprised that they're not putting some level of, centralization as implementation group number 1, because this is one of the very, very hard that you need an army of people to be able to review these things if you don't have that. So to me, my suggestion on this one is, if you are doing logging, which we should all do, pay attention to what you're logging, make sure that you're logging the correct information. And again, one more time, using tools may help you to minimize the noise and the false positives that you may have from all this logging that comes from all over the network. Okay, this is a simple one. I'm going to go very fast to this one. So email and web browser protection, simple. If you have authorized your users to use a particular email client and a particular browser, shut down the rest. It's not practical to have all the browsers that people can use. I don't think that's very easy to control, very easy to manage, because you need updates, you have to control the plugins, a lot of things that these very usable tools bring as a risk factor to your organization. Just pick the ones that you want to use and make the team use them. And on the malware defense, this is the one that is a little bit misunderstood too, because the antivirus concept, the traditional antivirus, which is signature based, is always, it's no longer used, right? That's no one is using that alone. You have a next generation AV normally, which it has an IPS or a web filtering or some level of machine learning that is using, or you have an EDR, and then now you have an MDR and then an XDR. So all those names means totally different things. So what I'm going to tell you is, to me today, having an EDR is not an option. It's something that people should be looking for. Some of them is different products. Some of them, they combine the functionality with a next generation antivirus. If you have a traditional antivirus, you probably need an upgrade soon. Data recovery, and again, on the backups, the only question I'm going to ask you guys for this one is, what are you doing about ransomware? And there's two very common ways today to handle the data recovery on the trusted data source for your backups. One is through immutability of those backups. There's a lot of solutions that they will give you that option. And the second one, which is a little more complex to implement, is the air gap of the backups, right? So those are the two most common approach for you to have a version of backups that no one can touch. On the network infrastructure management, this is the control that got some of the other controls, especially version 12 and version 11, controls number 12 and 11 from version 7. And here is pretty much taking a picture from the outside, looking at your network infrastructure, understanding, what is going to happen with the controls that you have today in the boundaries in your architecture on the network layer. And I'm going a little bit fast because we don't have a lot of time. So network monitoring and defense, again, going back to the previous one, there is a lot of products that, if you talk about products, there's a lot of overlapping between these controls, right? So some of the ones that you will use for the boundary defense, they will give you this ability to have an IPS for the defense on the network side. Some of them, when you talk about SIEM, can collect logs from these devices to be able to detect and understand what's going on. Maybe a question here that I like to ask is, what are you doing with the traffic that is leaving your organization? Are you, doing SSL inspection, right? Are you inspecting the encrypted traffic? Today, probably 85% of the traffic is encrypted, right? So you have to have some level of decryption at the layer that is leaving your organization to be able to understand if something is leaving that it should not. But be careful, because there's some information that is encrypted that should probably not be watching because it's PII and it's sensitive, right? So when you do that categorization of information that is leaving, you have to be careful in what you will be watching on the network monitoring and defense. And the second comment is about the security awareness and skills training. This is a very important control, because we know that 90-something% of the successful attacks today are coming from phishing or social engineering. So this is something that you can invest in the organization to protect. And I will put a twist to this. To me, this is a subject where you can not only teach the organization, but also you can teach the people. Make it personal. Make this personal. Teach them about cyberbullying, how they can talk about their kids about cyberbullying. Teach them about how they can protect them from identity theft, right? All those things that are going to be personal to your employees. Protect really the person who works for you, so they can protect your organization. Because this is a very, very important subject. I've seen, and I have, sadly, even yesterday, I have a friend of mine who contacted me about someone being somehow blackmailed about the situation with some pictures from kids. And it's, this is horrible that we are living in a world like that. So that's why, you need to give that personal flavor to this concept. There's so much, information that you can use. InfraGard has one. The FBI has one that is called Safety School Program, that you can go there and do with your kids to train them about cybersecurity, cyberbullying, another very important concept. So there's a lot of very good information where you can have this subject and make it personal for them to be able to take advantage.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Annie. That's been my own experience with this as well. Hey, the password, you've got big passwords, they're protecting the data. It That's pretty safe on its own. It's the human that causes the problem in the end, and accidentally, because these social engineering methods are really smart. They spend a lot of time investigating your LinkedIn contacts, your Twitter account. And it looks like your grandmother asking you a question, and
It's not. It's not. And
you're caught.
and it's affecting people in their homes. That's why I say, take it to personal level. I think you're going to help the people who works for you, which it should be a priority. I hope so. So control number 15 and 16. Control number 15 is the new one, and I was telling you this was pretty much a reaction, I would say, to what happened to SolarWinds, to Kaseya, ransomware attack. Those type of things end up putting this as something that we should pay a little bit more attention. And look at this. This is the same concept that we talked, Phil, before. Is know who you're doing business and what services do they provide. Okay, Peter, mi amigo Peter is asking, Andres, the MitraTax framework has gained popularity in the past years. Can we talk about benefits of mapping CIS controls to this framework? Peter, you know what? I will talk about that in the community defense model. I'm glad that you asked, because I'm going to explain that in a question. So about control number 16 here, this is one of those controls that not everyone will be applied, because not everyone develops software, and that's as you can see, there's zero demands for implementation group 1. So this is one of those that depends if you do software or you don't, you will have here something to do, and it's pretty much for those organizations that they need to handle the SDLC and put the controls in place for that process. Okay, so this is the last two controls, and then we're going to switch gears a little bit. Incident response management. I will tell everyone, that you should have your incident response plan. If you don't have one, go to the Homeland CISA site. There's so many you can take and pick one that you like. Use the NIST one. I use the NIST one. I feel that's a very good one. And the computer security incident handling is the 861. Where there's pretty much map it. You can use that. And then the second thing on incident response, if you don't, have some playbooks on key things that may happen, like ransom or malware, and what you need to do in response to those specific. Again, CISA is a great place to start. They have so much information free for you to use. And the penetration testing, maybe one important thing I like to mention here, and I'm not sure, Phil, if you heard this a lot, but vulnerability management, vulnerability assessment are not penetration testing, right? So penetration testing requires exploitation. That's the biggest difference. And when you require exploitation, things can go south. So one recommendation, if you're going to do penetration testing, make sure that you have all the paperwork signed authorizing you to do that, because this, of course, is illegal. So you cannot do it without the proper authorization. Okay, I'm sorry, I ran through the controls. Now let's talk about the assessment. So the people from CIS is so nice that they not only create the controls, but they also give you a tool that is free of use. You can go and register. The site is over there, and you can pretty much do your own assessment of where you are. The tool will ask you certain questions that you have to answer related to your policies, your implementation, your reporting of the controls, and then it will give you a maturity level. And of course, as every kind of assessment of security, that maturity level is a picture of today. And the goal is for you to be able to say, if this is my current maturity, where I should be, what should be my target maturity. And again, creating a roadmap for your program based on the safeguards of the implementation groups, this can help you get there. And remember, this is about a journey. This is not about I will have a perfect score in my first assessment. And the cool thing is also that you will track the assessment. Now I cannot remember how many of these you can have in place, but you can download the information when you do the assessment and then do a new one in the site. So they have a site that you can go register and do your assessment for free. So again, thank you, CIS, because you guys do a lot for our community, helping us secure organizations. And this is what we're talking about, the community defense model related to what Peter was asking. So one of the things that happened, and this happened in the first version, someone in the workbench asked this question: how we know that this is not such a bunch of geeks and nerds talking about security? How do we know that this is really effective? How do we know? How can we measure? And I don't know if you remember, but that was one of the design principles, that we have to measure the effectiveness of these controls. So the guy said, okay, that's a fair question. That's a very fair question. So what we're going to do is going to create this community defense model. And what we're going to do is we're going to analyze the most common type of attacks according to the Verizon data breach investigation report, which I'm sure a lot of people here is familiar. We're going to get those. We're going to summarize those attacks. We're going to categorize them. And we're going to compare our controls versus those attacks. So we know exactly if they are doing what they should be doing or they're not. So this is kind of, proving yourself that you have been doing your research and your work to make sure that these controls are effective. Because at the end, that's what we should all do, showing that the controls that we selected are effective and they're not just moving forward. And here are the results. So for the first 5 most common type of attacks, which are malware, ransomware, web application hacking, insider privilege and misuse, target intrusions, look at the effectiveness of control number 1. So it's pretty high. It's over 75% all of them. And if you have all the safeguards, you're talking over 90% of effectiveness of goes against those attacks. And here is, what Peter was asking is the meter attack will map how those attacks happen with all these different steps that the cyber key change we may have. And the guys went through all that and investigate how effective were the controls against these 5 attacks, considering the Mitre mitigations, the techniques that they may use. So as you can see, these controls are pretty effective. And this was done last year, by the way. This is not again 5 years ago. This version was released last year. So to me, some people ask me why you are so fun about what CIS is doing with these controls. Well, first of all, they not only do the job, but they also validate that what they're telling you is effective, right? And to me, that's very important, because at the end, we want to have controls that protect our organization. I like to say that there's not enough money for cybersecurity. There's just not. There's always, the silver bullet. There's no silver bullet. There's always someone trying to sell you the silver bullet. There's no silver bullet. So you have to do your homework. You have to do diligence and take care of these. So what they did with this community defense model, to me, was huge, very important, super important.
I think is what I know it is. I think what fascinates me as well about this, I'm a numbers data guy, and from the other perspective of where we were talking about, deciding what you're going to protect, this community defense model and the numbers in there, that the analytics help you, or potentially help you decide, hey, this is where I should invest.
Yes. And again, the difference here is the controls are very, very organized in a way that, again, they are agnostic to solutions, right? But at the end, the products that you should be looking for should be aligned with the controls somehow to deliver the value, right? If not, you're missing something there. So don't let people come to tell you that you need, a bazooka to kill an ant, right? Sometimes that may happen, right? Are you going to kill an ant? Yes, but it's a bazooka what you really need. How much other things are you going to destroy because of using the bazooka? So that's where, I feel the controls can help you, guide you in those decisions. They're not going to tell you is that tool versus that product, this process versus that. It's just a guiding, of saying, hey, these are your prioritized safeguards that you probably want to have in place. How you deliver those is your problem. How you deliver MFA, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
MFA is what we recommend.
No, if I was going to give out homework, Andy, and it wasn't my job today, but I would say read this community defense model as well.
Yeah, it's a very good article. It's a very good paper, and I think I put it there. So it's all the slides refers back to the CIS site, and you will be able to see all this information. And I have a reference page at the end. So I would like to close with some takeaways, and then we can ask the audience to see if we have any more questions. But the first one is, And you ask this at the beginning, right? At the beginning of this, you ask these questions. Asset management is a cornerstone of everything when you talk about the strategy that you have to have in place on information security. So asset management is still super important. Data protection, as we have seen, has the biggest change since version 7.1. And this is because you should be considering what is really critical for your information and make sure that you are somehow protecting that versus other things that may not be. Implementation group 1, that's where you need to start. That's your cyber hygiene group. Whenever you're ready to start implementing the controls, those are the list of the safeguards that you have to have in place to start the journey in information security if you pick this framework to use. We talk about assessment, we talk about the current maturity, we talk about where you are today. I like, one of the things that I like from the CIS assessment is you don't have to share that with anyone. That's yours. So be sincere when you answer those questions, right? I like to tell that people, say, don't lie. This is, you're not getting married with anyone. Don't do a demo. This is not an officer or compliance officer looking at this. Be honest, be sincere when you answer this, so you can have a good picture seeing this. And the last one is, to me, they have gained a lot of respect when they do the validation through the community defense model. That's a way for them to say what we plan, that we see that this problem is actually validated against, someone else, like the Verizon report. This is not us saying that these attacks, they did not pick the attacks. They went to, a very recognized report in the industry to test the effectiveness of the critical controls. And to me, that provide a lot of value back to the framework and why it's important and why people should be using it. So these are the references. You can see I put pretty much everything here that I felt was important. There's a YouTube channel from a guy called Rick, that he has an explanation, very long explanation for each of the controls. Rick he has been, I watch all his videos. He's a very, very important member of the CIS. He has been in the counseling panel, on the editor panel, making sure that the controls were finished on time. So that's a very good videos to watch. And then, of course, I put there the NIST publication 861, that is the computer event handling, so people can reference that. But this is very easy to find it online too, if you guys want to start. And with that, I will let you for questions.
Thanks so much, Andy. Great presentation, really informative. And we've got a couple of minutes left. If anyone in the audience has additional questions, I wanted to ask that: is there an industry recognized certification associated with using these controls?
You know what? I hate to say that there's not, and this is something I have been talking with some of the friends that I know from there. It's one of the things that you should probably start investigating how to do that, because let's be honest, well, NIST doesn't have that either, right? NIST doesn't have that certification process. ISO do, if you want to have a SOC 2, that's not a certification, but it's a report, the attestation report that you have, which is somehow a paper that says that you are doing what you should be doing. So it's not the same. But on the CIS, there's nothing like a compliance factor that would tell you, oh, you are doing. I will tell you this: I have done this assessment for banks, for other people, and even if you're using a very solid framework like ISO or NIST, this will help you to open the eyes on things that those frameworks sometimes will not contemplate.
Right. Oh, one other question before we go. You talked a lot. We talked about cyber hygiene. How does that defined in the?
Yes. So the cyber hygiene, as I was telling you before, in version 6 and version 7, cyber hygiene was the first 6 controls, and of course, to a level of implementation, you cannot have the 6 full controls implemented with all the sub controls. At that time, they were sub control. Now they're called safeguards. So what happened in version 7.1, it was someone said, well, actually, there's other things from the other, 14 controls that we should also consider, because they are very important, right? So when they developed version 7.1, what happened is they say, okay, we just have to break this model where we say we should only do controls number 1 to 6. Now we're going to consider all the controls and pick some of these sub controls or safeguards to be representing that, which I think is important. So there's 3 controls today that they don't have implementation group, that are 13, 18, and 16. So these are the 3 controls that they don't have implementation group. Number 1, so 18 is, we saw them, but penetration testing, the application security, and that, it makes sense, because maybe for someone who is starting, maybe doing a penetration test. I like to say this, right? People sometimes will approach me and say, "Oh, we need to do the penetration testing." My first question is, yes, that's not the problem. Tell me a little bit about how you're managing your assets. Control number 1, right? Don't go to control number 18 when you need to start thinking about control number 1.
Andy, great advice, great presentation. Always a treat to work with you and see you. Thank you so much.
A pleasure to be here. It's glad that we have some of the friends online too, like Peter and I think Elizabeth.
That's right.
So again, I'm not sure if there is any other question.
I think we're out of time with the opportunity. So thanks again to Andy Roos for a great presentation. To all our viewers and listeners today, thank you so much for spending time with us. I hope you enjoy our session, and don't forget to join us again on March 16th for our network. And to Andy, outstanding insights and thoughts. Can't thank you enough for volunteering your time to Cyber Houston and the work that you do for the community. For our viewers, this presentation will be available on Cyber Houston Facebook page, YouTube channel, and the cyberhouston.org website. Please subscribe to our Cyber Houston YouTube channel and follow our Cyber Houston Facebook page. Remember to hit the notification button to receive updates on new cybersecurity leadership content. At Cyber Houston, we take lessons learned from our enterprise members, distill them into sensible, economical guidance to help small and mid-sized businesses improve their cyber posture and build resilience. We're here for you and committed to the economic vitality of all enterprises with a sharp focus on our small and mid-sized businesses. This guidance comes in the form of our business vitality guide, guidance for the board of directors, a cyber preparedness assessment, as well as available in PDF, as well as online, and the free cyber scan. All of these resources are available free of charge and can be found on the resource tab on the cyberhouston.org website. A special thanks to our sponsors. We'll bring those up: Hewlett Packard Enterprise, Blue Lance, Reneka Digital, and University of Houston Downtown. We couldn't do this without all of you, so thank you again to our sponsors. Our summit, our annual summit, this year will be October the 6th at Centerpoint Energy, their auditorium. Thank you to Centerpoint for sponsoring us for that. Mel Navarez, thank you. And we're looking forward to that. So please remember to come join us. Until then, remain cyber strong. Take care. Thank you.